Hi, it's Angry Admin here with angrysystems.com, and yesterday the headlines of VMware Explore was announcement about vSphere 8. I have to admit that I haven't settled down yet with vSphere 7, all those upgrades and the problems, hiccups, if you will, with update 3, and yet we will have a new version of vSphere 8. As all major updates, it's packed with loads of improvement features. So let's dive into it. Let me start from something which is in my interest the most, so it's security and compliance. Quite few handy features. What I like is a TLS 1.2 only. So vSphere 8 will not support old versions of protocol. Both have been previously disabled by default in vSphere 7 and now are removed in vSphere 8. Also, what's interesting is this SSH automatic timeout, which is great because once we are going to troubleshoot hosts, we need to switch on SSH, and very often admins, myself included, forget to put SSH off. Now, I personally have a script, a PowerShell script, which check my environment every so often and switch off SSH, but this is very handy. So how it works, after the period of inactivity, SSH will get off. Very simple and nice feature. vSphere 8 will not allow you to install any binaries which are not a VIP. This is a good measure anti-ransomware, which is a great step forward. Discontinuation of TPM 1.2. So ESX 8.0 displays a warning during installation or upgrade if a TPM 1.2 device is present. The installation or upgrade is not prevent. All you can see with that message that this host has TPM 1.2 hardware, which is no longer supported, and for full use of vSphere feature, use TPM 2.0. Sandboxed daemons. ESX 8.0 daemons and processes run in their own sandbox domain where only the minimum required permissions are available to the process. But what else can we expect? vSphere introduced a vSphere Distributed Services Engine. It unlocks the power of data processing units, DPUs, for hardware accelerated data processing to improve infrastructure performance. But what DPUs are, you may ask? So they are special system on chip cards that you can say, and they are mini computers which you can install in the server host. And to give you an example how that helps, let's have a look on NSX, which can be installed on DPU, and all the load, all the security can be offload to DPU. So essentially you are installing the NSX on DPU and everything, and all the load of NSX is on the DPU. Also, if you install your vSphere 8 on DPU, you will be separating essentially your kind of load to DPU from CPU, and all the processing which CPU needs to do regarding your VMs will be free for only VMs. So everything related to vSphere management, that will be part of the DPU. So security-wise and load balancing-wise, that is very smart solution. We have a two separate entity, DPU, which you can take over wherever you installing on DPU, and CPU for the rest. So NSX on DPU, vSphere on DPU, everything related to VMs on the CPU. Tons of features. So let's go to the Tanzu. As you know, previously there were multiple variants of vSphere with Tanzu, including TKGs, supervisor and guest cluster for vSphere only. There was TKG-M, management and workload cluster for multi-cloud, including vSphere. Now, with vSphere 8, those options are bring together with single unified Kubernetes runtime. The next interesting things are workload availability zones. This is a new feature which allows admins to isolate workloads over vSphere cluster. In the simple terms, supervisor and Tanzu Kubernetes cluster can be deployed across availability zones. This allows to ensure worker nodes are not on the same vSphere cluster, improving availability. With current release of vSphere 8, the 3 workload availability zones are currently required, and once activated you will have a choice of using the traditional cluster method and also use the new availability zones. So let's have a look on the Lifecycle Manager now, and along with introducing DPU, of course Lifecycle Manager supports automatically remediate the ESX installation on a DPU. Now please be aware that baseline Lifecycle Manager, which is our beloved vSphere Update Manager, so VUM, is deprecated in vSphere 8. It doesn't mean that it's not accessible, it means that this version is the last version which supports that method. So be prepared to convert your cluster to VLCM, and your cluster will be managed from the image. With VLCM, you can stage update payloads on the host, and the staging doesn't require maintenance mode. This of course will reduce the time needed for the host to spend in the maintenance mode. What else is good, that the firmware can be staged as well. Of course, for the firmware you have to have configured a hardware support manager, like for instance OmniVV from Dell. If you want to see how to set up the hardware manager, please visit my blog angrysysops.com, and there is article which I will be linking in this video, and you can see step by step how to set up OmniVV with vSphere. Another feature which I actually don't like, they brought back parallel remediation. What is this? This means that you can put few hosts in one go in maintenance mode. All hosts can be remediated in the same time. Why I don't like it? I just got caught by vSphere Update Manager in version 6.5 when I trust DRS to balance my work, and DRS thought that day that would be good idea to put more than half of my cluster hosts in the maintenance mode and start to do patching. And as you can imagine, that caused a chaos because the resources were shrinked and the VMs didn't get enough resources and the cluster was very stretched, and I had a few issues, especially with the resource hungry VMs. So from that time I never used parallel remediation again. With the VLCM, and if you have a local storage and you don't vMotion of VMs, you can suspend VMs, and in this case, then yes, then this is okay to use it. It will save the time. But if there is a shared storage, I wouldn't recommend that one. On the local storage, yes. On the shared storage, no. The next feature I want to talk is configuration profiles. So the configuration profiles are available in vSphere 8 as so-called tech preview. I think they will replace a host profiles, which are still available in vSphere 8, so you can still use a host profile as we used to. However, with configuration profiles, rather than specifying a profile level config and attaching it to object such as ESX host, now we can define the configuration on the cluster object, and child host will obtain that configuration. This is similar to how cluster image work in Lifecycle Manager and ensures consistent configuration for the host in that particular cluster. Let's also have a look on the enhanced recovery for vCenter. So this feature is quite nice because if you recover your vCenter from backup, on the boot it will query the cluster, and let's say it's check if you add a new ESXi host, and if you did, then vCenter will receive the update for the cluster, like a real-time cluster status, if you will. This new feature called device groups is pretty smart. So now, for now, the GPU and the networks devices can be grouped together and present for the virtual machine as a group. Device groups can be composite of 2 or more hardware devices that share a common PCIe switch, or devices that share a direct interconnect between each other. So instead of presenting one device by one, you can group them together and present as a group. Let's have a look now on guest-oriented and workloads. So as we can see, the version 20 is the latest virtual hardware version. The team for hardware version 20 brings new virtual hardware innovation, enhances guest services for application, and increases performance and scale for certain workloads. So we can see that it supports latest Intel and AMD CPU, device virtualization extension up to 32 direct path for I/O devices, vSphere data share, application aware migration. I will be talking about this in a few moments. Latest guest operating system support, up to 8 vGPU devices groups, which I already talked, and high latency sensitive with hyper threading. With Windows 11, there is a requirement for virtual TPM devices to be present in virtual machines. And as we know, the cloning VM with a vTPM can introduce a security risk as TPM secrets are cloned. So how the vSphere 8 is dealing with that issue is TPM provisioning policy, That allows you during the cloning to replace TPM. What it does is just stripped your virtual machine from the TPM and it's issued a new TPM with unique secrets. Now I want to talk about something which is very cool feature in my opinion, and it's a kind of preparation application for migration. Sometimes you cannot just vMotion virtual machine because it runs very sensitive VM. Those VMs could be time sensitive application. There are VoIP, so it's a voice applications, like for instance Cisco communicators and clustered applications, and sometimes data warehouse applications with very sensitive database. And before patching or migrating, those applications needs to be stopped, services needs to be stopped, and the other team has to be involved to stop the services. Then after that they have to start services and check on the status. vSphere 8 introduced something which I called migration awareness, because it's not official term, but it's mentioned here that this application can be written to migration aware to improve the interoperability with vSphere vMotion. So what that is that they prepare application for vMotion. So this could be gracefully stopping services or performing failover to another cluster. Just prepare that VM, that cluster for migration. And if we are in the subject of sensitive application, obviously the latency is a big subject. So with vSphere 8 there is improvement for application sensitive to latency on the CPU side. In vSphere 8, vCPUs are scheduled on the same physical hyper-threatened core on the CPU if it is enabled. So hardware version 20 is required for this, and it can be easily configured in the settings of virtual machine. Let's have a look now for vNUMA configuration. This is not a new concept, it's been for a while here. But with vSphere 8 hardware version 20 allows you to use the vSphere client to configure vNUMA topology for virtual machines. And the new CPU topology types is visible on the VM summary tab, display the current topology. Let's have a look on the vSphere scalability now. So vGPU per VM changed from 4 to 8. Lifecycle Manager can now manage 1000 hosts up from 400 hosts. You can now manage 10,000 VMs per cluster, was previously 8,000. Each ESXi host can now have up to 32 direct I/O devices each. And if you head over to my blog Angry Admin, which is angrysysops.com, then you can see this table. And guys, so these are the most significant changes. Of course, I will link the original blog down below the video so you can read by yourself. I will link my blog page when all the features are listed and explained over here as well. As soon as vSphere 8 will be released, I will show you that live. I will update my lab environment to vSphere 8, or we build vSphere 8 lab from scratch. We will see. I'm hoping to get that really soon on my hands so I can share with you. But in meantime, I would appreciate if you leave a like and subscribe to my channel and comment in the comment section You can chat with me on the Twitter. My handler is @AngrySysops. Guys, that's it. Tune in to VMware Explore. There's a few new announcements like vSun 8, which I will be talking about in the next video. And check my blog for all the news. See you, thank you for watching, and goodbye.